What if I told you that in the Bahrain tests Lewis Hamilton not only adapted to the Ferrari, but found something within the SF26 that not even the team itself had fully exploited? Because what happened in those 3 days was not just another preseason. It wasn't just accumulation of laps. It wasn't just comparing long runs with McLaren or measuring strength against Mercedes. It was the exact moment in which Hamilton began to understand how to unlock a hidden layer of the car, a combination of hybrid management, mechanical traction, and aerodynamic balance that, well executed, turns the SF26 into a much more dangerous weapon than the times on the table suggested. Ferrari arrived in Bahrain with doubts about its operating window. She left there shocked, not because he led all the simulations, but because he discovered that when everything fits, the car has something special. And it was Lewis Hamilton who found the key. The question is, what exactly did the 7-time world champion see in those 3 days that completely changed the internal perception of the team? The first day of testing at the Bahrain International Circuit was not designed to impress anyone. Ferrari did not go out looking for headlines, nor fast laps, nor direct comparisons with the rest. He went out to understand his car. And within that plan, the absolute protagonist was Lewis Hamilton. From the first runs, it was clear that the SF26 was not an extreme single-seater, but was not easy either. It showed interesting stability under braking, especially in the most critical areas of the track, such as turns 1 and 10, where the weight transfer usually dislodges the rear axle. However, the car had a very specific characteristic. It needed to be driven with surgical precision. He did not tolerate sudden inputs. He did not reward excess. I asked for softness. Hamilton understood it quickly. Instead of pushing the pace, he began to build confidence lap after lap. Ferrari fueled high, seeking to replicate real race conditions. The objective was to measure degradation, thermal behavior, and energy efficiency under prolonged pressure. And it was in that context where something interesting began to appear. The SF26 showed surprisingly consistent traction in slow cornering. It was not explosive, but it was progressive. That means the power delivery didn't break grip aggressively. In Bahrain, where corner exit is key for the long back straight, that detail is decisive. And Hamilton began experimenting with the way he released the throttle. Rear axle temperatures were more stable when Hamilton managed the transition phase between brake and accelerator in this way. There were no sharp peaks. There were no micro slips that punished the rubber. It was a repeated pattern, and that in long runs translates into consistency. But the most telling point was not in the pure mechanics. I was into the energy. The SF26 seemed to have very interesting hybrid efficiency in a straight line. When other cars began to show signs of clipping that drop in electrical power at the end of the straight, the Ferrari maintained more sustained thrust. It was not necessarily faster at the absolute top, but it was more constant in delivery. Hamilton began to play with that management. Instead of deploying all the electrical energy immediately at corner exit, it modulated the use of the ERS to maintain stability first and thrust later. This synchronization made the car come out better settled, and in addition, it reached the straight with a cleaner acceleration phase. And there the hidden trick began to take shape. It was not a new component. It was not a revolutionary wing. It was how the car integrated 3 factors at the same time: mechanical traction, hybrid delivery, and aerodynamic balance in the acceleration phase. If one failed, performance went down. But when all 3 coincided in their ideal window, the SF26 became extremely efficient. The first day showed no fireworks on the timesheet. But inside the Ferrari box, the atmosphere began to change. Engineers detected positive patterns. Hamilton was finding the right way to talk to the car. I wasn't mastering it yet, but he was deciphering their language. And that in a preseason where every detail counts can be much more important than a spectacular fastest lap. If you want, we can now expand on the second day, which is where Ferrari really begins to realize the real potential of the SF26 and where the internal impact was much greater. I recommend expanding the second act to further raise the narrative and technical tension without repeating information. The second day in Bahrain was completely different from the first. It was no longer just about understanding the car. It was about pushing him, to take it towards the controlled limit, to check if what Hamilton had begun to intuit the day before was really reproducible under more demanding conditions. Ferrari changed the program. Less isolated experimentation and more structured simulation. Medium batches with intermediate fuel. Sustained rhythm. Internal comparisons between energy maps. And that was where something began to appear that caught attention within the box. The SF26 SF26 was simply not stable. He was sensitive, extremely sensitive to small changes in energy management and in the way of attacking the transition phase between corner entry and exit. When Hamilton forced the apex, the car lost that rear harmony that made it strong. But when I patiently built the corner, the traction was surprisingly efficient. And in Bahrain, where degradation is one of the great silent judges, that difference is brutal. During one of the longest simulations of the day, Ferrari compared data with projected internal benchmarks against McLaren and Mercedes. They were not public comparisons. They were average pace analyses under similar conditions. And what they found was interesting. The Ferrari was not the fastest on a pure lap, but at a constant pace it began to be truly competitive. The key was how the car used energy on the straight. On the long main straight and in the back straight, the SF26 maintained a more progressive electrical delivery. It did not exploit all the power in the first meters. He distributed it. This meant that, in the middle of the straight, while other cars began to lose electric thrust, the Ferrari continued to push with consistency. Hamilton began to synchronize that with his style. I wasn't looking to maximize immediate acceleration. I was looking to optimize the whole. He rotated the car, stabilized the rear axle, and then released power with an almost millimeter transition. The result was a less visually spectacular corner exit, but much more efficient in terms of temperature and energy. And then the detail appeared that shocked Ferrari. On long runs, rear degradation was not only controlled, it was linear. There were no abrupt drops. There were no overheating peaks. The tire worked within a stable range when the car was in its sweet spot. And that sweet spot depended directly on how three factors were combined: rubber temperature, hybrid map, and aerodynamic balance in acceleration. If one of those three elements went out of the optimal range, the car became more nervous. But when they coincided, the performance was maintained lap after lap. Engineers began doing comparative simulations in real time. They adjusted the differential. They adjusted the braking distribution. They adjusted the delivery of the ERS in specific phases. And Hamilton reacted immediately. I felt the change. I integrated it. He exploited it. He was no longer simply adapting to the Ferrari. I was starting to mold it. And that's what changed the atmosphere within the team. Because the SF26 showed that it had potential, but also that its operational window was narrow. Very narrow. It is not a car that forgives improvisation. It is a car that demands technical precision and sensitivity. The second day ended with a clear feeling. Ferrari not only had a competitive car, they had a complex car, but with a high-performance ceiling if they could understand how to always keep it within its ideal range. Hamilton was getting there faster than expected, and the third day would be the definitive test to confirm if that was a mirage or the beginning of something much bigger. In the first laps of the long stint, the car showed something that was already apparent: stability under load. With a full tank, the SF26 did not break down during long braking. It did not suffer from sudden oversteer in the middle phase of the corner. But what was really relevant began to be noticed when the tires entered the critical wear zone. Normally in Bahrain, when the rear tire starts to drop, the driver has to choose: either conserve energy and temperature or maintain pace and risk degradation. Hamilton found a third way: modulated hybrid delivery into specific phases, not just straight, also at the exact moment in which the car finished settling after the rotation. This allowed the rear tire not to receive the full blow of torque at the most delicate moment. The consequence was brutal in terms of consistency. While other cars projected more abrupt drops in pace in internal comparative analyses, the Ferrari maintained a much more progressive degradation curve. He wasn't the fastest on the first lap of the stint, but he didn't fall violently in the 10th either. That changes careers. The second stint of the simulation was even more revealing. With less fuel, Hamilton began to push lightly. And there appeared something that within the team they did not expect to see so clearly. The car had a second layer of performance when the energy was perfectly managed. On the straight, the SF26 not only reached good top speed, he kept her. It didn't go into clipping so early. The electric delivery seemed to be better integrated with the heat engine, allowing sustained thrust beyond the point where others began to lose performance. Ferrari reviewed the data several times. Now the big question is not whether the SF26 has potential. That was already clear in Bahrain. The real question is whether Ferrari will be able to extend that operating window and keep the car in its sweet spot under real race conditions with traffic, strategic pressure, and temperature variations. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.